Welcome back to the third video in a series of 3 on making a blank with me. By now you should have already watched video 1, which dealt with hand gouging, the folding over, and beveling, and then also video 2, which took you through scoring, forming, and putting on the wires of a reed. The reed that you have now should have sat to dry out, still wrapped in this cotton twine. I leave it on the mandrel for about 48 to 72 hours. This gives it plenty of time to completely dry out and take shape. For this video, you'll need a REIGER Mandrel, REIGER Pliers, 22 gauge brass wire, a razor blade, FF thread, I'll be using 2 different types, Duco Cement, a triangle diamond file, a ruler, a tip clipper, here I'll be using a REIGER tip clipper, a knife and a plaque, or a tip profiling machine. Once it's dry, the next step is to go ahead and unwrap it from all of that cotton thread. You'll have noticed that the tube overall has shrunk, and this leaves the wires loose. The wires may have shifted as the reed has dried out and shrunk into shape. So at this point, I like to move the wires into place, but also double check the measurements with a ruler. The first wire is usually directly behind the collar for me. The second wire is about 6 to 9 millimeters from the first wire. This is a variable measurement for me, largely because I use this as a way to brighten or darken the sound. And if you'd like to know more about that, I will link to a video where I discuss that in detail. The third wire is 1/4 of an inch from the base of the tube. The next bit that I like to do is squinch the tube, making sure that it's really taking on that round shape, especially at the base where it will fit on the bocal. This is also a chance for me to check the third wire measurement. The REIGER Pliers, part of the reason that I love them is not only do they have that round shape that fits directly over the mandrel so I can really squinch and get a round tube, but they're just under 1/4 of an inch. So from the center of the wire to the base of the tube, because it's triple wrapped, gives me 1/4 of an inch measurement. Squinching the tube directly below the third wire also gives me that ability to make sure that the tube isn't flaring and creating a bit of an hourglass figure by any means. Next up, I like to measure and put in the collar. I like to do this before putting the binding on so that I'm getting a clean measurement, because sometimes if I try to do this after the binding is on, it's harder to get right up on that tube. Once I have the marking of where the tube will begin and where the blades will start, what I do is I take a razor blade, especially sharp, and I take the razor blade and I rock it back and forth on the cane where the tube is going to be. From here, I slide it parallel directly back to that marking, and that marking should stop it from going past it. Little pieces of bark will shred off. Now it's hard to get it so that it's completely flat, so what I do is I take a diamond triangle file and I brace the reed on the back of my palm because it's squishy and I can push into it, and I sand the back 1/4 inch of the reed, making sure that there aren't any ledges left from where I have just put the collar in. And as always, remember to do both sides. Next up, I like to get the measurement of the blade for the tip of the reed. So what I do is I take my ruler and I brace it directly against the collar that I've just put in, and I mark where I'm going to go ahead and clip the tip. Next step for me is going ahead and putting a binding on the reed. Now, by putting a binding on the reed, I'm taking care of 3 aspects. First off, I'm making sure that the tube has a good seal on it and it doesn't leak. The second portion is that it weights the back end of the reed so that if I drop it, it's not the first portion to hit. Instead, the tube portion will hit, then the blade will hit. The blade being more delicate, this can save it because I'm accident prone, I'll admit it, and I have dropped one of my favorite reeds, and this is making sure that, again, that heaviest portion hits first. The third reason that I go ahead and put a binding on is that this is a labeling process for me. I can tell you by looking into my reed box by what thread and the combinations of threads that I'm using, what type of cane it is, what profile, and what shape it is. So for me, it also helps me with a labeling process so that if I'm doing something consistently and it's working, I can look in my reed box and tell you all about that reed. Okay, so how do we wrap a reed? I have a separate video on this that goes much more slowly and in detail, so I will link to it at this point if you want to jump over and watch that, but I'll give you a quick, speedy version of it. I start off with putting on a layer of Duco Cement from the second wire all the way to the base of the tube. I take 2 threads in this case. By wrapping with 2 threads, I'm identifying the reed, but it also wraps faster. I make a slip knot and I stick it directly below the second wire and I begin winding my way down the reed. Once I hit the 3rd wire, I want a solid color for the type of cane that I'm using to identify it at this point. So I will cut out the auxiliary color and then wrap the turbine, the heaviest portion, just with a single color while that other thread color is wound into that so that it won't break free. After I have an ample knot on the base of it, I go ahead and create another slip knot and cinch that directly down against the 3rd wire. Then I add a layer of Duco Cement and I smear that with my fingers so that I get a good, even, light coat. Not too much here. I don't want to overly shrink the tube, and too much Duco Cement can do that. After the first coat of Duco Cement has dried out, I go ahead and add a second, wait for that to dry, and then a third, and then wait for that to dry. Once the 3 coats of Duco Cement have completely dried out, I go ahead and I replace the second wire and the first wire. Now I replace the second wire because oftentimes it will have glue on it, and if it's glued down, it's not doing that same amount of work that it could be doing. That glue will act as a sort of resistance. So I replace the second wire. I also replace the first wire largely because in forming it can oftentimes have bubbles in it, so it's not holding directly around the reed. It will have little bunched up portions of it, and I want to make sure that it's flush and flat against that reed. This is when it really gets exciting. I take the reed and I put it into water so that it can soak. I let it soak for about 5 minutes so that it is completely saturated. And then from there, I go ahead and take it and clip the tip. Now there are several different ways you can clip the tip. I have used jewelry clippers in the past, but I really like the REIGER tip cutters, largely because it gives me that straight line directly across. And with tip clippers or a razor blade, I just was not getting that great of a cut. So I do love the REIGER tip clippers for this reason. After I have the tip clipped, I will go ahead and put a tip on the front edge of the reed, about the front third of it. Now, sometimes I'll do this with a knife and a plaque, but today I'm going to cheat and use the REIGER tip profiling machine. If you would like for me to film a video on putting a tip on a reed directly before playing it, right after it's been a blank, leave me a comment down below and I will film that. After the tip has been put on it, I go ahead and give it a couple of crows. make sure it's vibrating, and I will start playing on it and breaking it in. Before it will actually be played publicly, I will have a series of playing it daily, taking cane off, playing it daily, taking cane off. So if you'd like to see a series on me actually breaking in the reed before it becomes performance ready, let me know, because it is a full week process of trying and testing and then removing cane and then getting it ready before I will ever perform on it. Okay guys, I hope you've enjoyed this series of making a blank with me. I have loved hearing your comments about things that you do that are ever so slightly different. If you saw anything today, do take a second and leave me a comment. Or if I mentioned something that you do want to see a future video on, let me know. I love getting feedback from you guys about what you want to see next. So leave me a comment if you have a second. If you enjoyed this series, give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any future tips or tricks, or just hanging out with me, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! This is the second video in a 3-part series of forming a reed with me. If you missed the first video, I will link it in the description box so that you can watch all 3 videos in succession, and then we'll have made a reed together.